It's hard for me to realize that I've connected my life with a real monster. My wife has done terrible things. As it usually happens, I began to notice strange behavior behind my wife, which got worse and worse every day, until one day it turned my life upside down. I didn't even know it had gone that far. Damn it. When I almost got to work, I realized that I had forgotten my pass and wallet. I was just lucky. Not only would I be late because I would have to go home to pick them up, but my loving wife would surely take another opportunity to point out my flaws. Recently, my relationship with my wife, Darla, has been incredibly strained. I can't even remember the last time we were close. Of course, we've had a few brief meetings over the past few months, but they've been far from satisfying. It feels like a year has passed since we had a real bed relationship. It's not just our bed life that has gone downhill. It seems that nothing I do or don't do gives Darla pleasure anymore. About a year ago, our life together was like a fairy tale. We have been married for 8 years now, and since our first meeting we have experienced deep love and attraction. Even with 2 children, 6-year-old Jody and 4-year-old Mark, we didn't waste any time. We were close at least 4 times a week, and I wasn't the only one who initiated it. Darla wanted me almost as much as I wanted her. Those were the days. However, everything abruptly changed about 6 to 8 months ago. Initially, she appeared slightly less eager when I initiated intimacy. She wouldn't refuse, but it seemed as if it had turned into a duty rather than something she anticipated. As time passed, our intimacy and emotional connection dwindled. I initially thought it might be a temporary phase she was experiencing and hoped it would improve with time and affection, but it continued to deteriorate. Now it feels like resetting in a tense environment. When I attempted to discuss the matter with her and offer assistance with household tasks, she responded with hostility, accusing me alternatively of criticizing her and lamenting my lack of contribution to chores. Despite my efforts to reassure her that I was willing to do more, she became even more hostile, accusing me of trying to provoke an argument. Last night, I made another attempt to address the issues in our relationship. We were in the family room with the TV on, the kids asleep. She appeared relaxed, so I initiated the conversation. "Can we talk for a moment, honey?" "What now, Jim?" Her response suggested she expected an unpleasant conversation. "We need to work on our relationship. All we've been doing lately is fighting, and I can't handle much more of it. It seems like you might suspect me of cheating. Your behavior reflects that suspicion." I noticed her shock at my words, yet instead of seizing the opportunity to initiate some form of communication, she immediately shifted into attack mode. "How could you say that?" she retorted. "Our current situation is no different from before. You're just provoking another argument as usual." "I'm not seeking conflict. I'm attempting to understand why we've been at odds for the past few months. I want to identify what I perceive as an issue and work towards resolving it. Frankly, I believe we could benefit from counseling. There's no issue. The only problem is your tendency to perceive problems where none exist. I'm fed up with your constant accusations. Well, let's examine if there truly isn't any issue. Then why have we gone from being intimate 4 or 5 times a week to only once in the past 2 months? Why did I practically have to impose on you that time, when you initiated intimacy almost as often as I did? We used to sit together on the backyard bench watching our kids, with your head resting on my shoulder and our arms around each other. Now if I come out there, you get up and leave. It seems like you can't bear to be in the same room with me. Our once happy home now feels more like a battleground." "I have no clue what you're talking about. Nothing has changed from my perspective. If anyone needs counseling here, it's you. I certainly don't need it." With that, she stood up and stormed out of the room, and a moment later, I heard the bedroom door slam shut. I wish I could say I was surprised by her outburst, but the truth is, I wasn't. This had become her typical reaction to any attempt on my part to initiate communication over the past couple of months. I sat there for some time, pondering the wreckage my once perfect life had become. What on earth is happening? I wondered. Is she experiencing some sort of breakdown? Am I? As I reflected on my earlier suggestion that she might suspect me of having an affair, it occurred to me that perhaps she was the one being unfaithful. However, everything I knew suggested that a woman having an affair would typically try to conceal it by being overly affectionate to her betrayed partner, not by behaving as Darla was, which was downright hostile. Unless, of course, she was retaliating for my own supposed infidelity, but I thought I had addressed that when I raised the topic with her. After hours of contemplation, I found myself no closer to a resolution than before. The only decision I made was to explore the possibility of seeking counseling for myself, in the hope that it might provide insight into the situation. As I made my way upstairs to bed, I felt a sense of relief, knowing that I was taking a small step toward some form of resolution. Upon reaching the bedroom, however, I discovered my toiletries and a change of clothes strewn on the floor outside and the door locked. Strangely, I felt relieved. The prospect of sharing a cold bed with Darla held little appeal. I retreated to the guest room, undressed, and went to sleep. Last night is in the past. This morning I woke up early and left the house before anyone else was awake. Normally I wake the kids and take Mark to daycare while Darla takes Jody to school on her way to work. However, today, I felt the urge to escape early, so I rose before dawn, grabbed breakfast from McDonald's, and headed to the lake to witness the sunrise. It was refreshing to indulge in something I've always loved without worrying about Darla's reaction or her potential anger for leaving her to handle the kids. Watching the sunrise, I came to a realization that Darla and I have reached a turning point in our relationship. I've decided to prioritize my own well-being from now on, while Darla will have to take care of herself. Although I'll continue to support her financially as her husband, she'll no longer be my top priority. Instead, the kids and I will come first. Feeling much lighter, I left the lake and started my journey to work. I made a resolution to indulge in such moments more frequently and ensure that the kids spend more time enjoying nature. While driving, I pondered further on my decision from last night to pursue counseling and concluded that it remained a wise choice. Being an air traffic controller, I earn a substantial income with excellent benefits, so financing it won't be an issue. Besides, who knows? It might even improve my relationship. It certainly couldn't hurt. As I approached the control center and searched for my ID, I realized I had left my wallet and ID on the dresser in the guest bedroom. I hadn't noticed the absence of my wallet earlier because I keep some cash in the console of my truck for convenience at drive-thrus. However, now I needed the ID to gain entry to work. Security measures at air traffic control centers have tightened significantly since 9/11, so having at least my driver's license was essential, and it was in my wallet. I felt frustrated for a moment, but then I remembered the resolutions I made that morning and felt uplifted. I informed my boss that I would be taking one of my personal days off to address some personal matters. He wasn't thrilled, but it wasn't a major issue either. I turned around and headed back home. While driving, I pondered further and concluded that I would grab my ID and wallet and just venture out for the day, doing whatever I pleased. Perhaps I'd head to the mountains for a hike, or visit the amusement park and ride the roller coaster. As I turned onto our street, I spotted an unfamiliar car in our driveway. Initially, my positive feelings from the morning dissipated momentarily. However, I reasoned, it could be something completely innocent. Let's not anticipate trouble. Besides, even if it is something negative, I've already decided that my priorities are taking care of myself and the kids. Darla is responsible for her own worries. Upon opening the door, I braced myself for the worst, but I must admit, my newfound attitude was severely tested by what awaited me inside. I pulled up by the curb, noticing the unfamiliar car parked haphazardly, blocking the entire driveway, before making my way to the front door. Upon entering, I discovered Jody engrossed in a video game in the living room. "Why aren't you at school?" I inquired. "And where's your mom and brother?" "Mark was just here," replied Jody. "Mom is upstairs with her friend." "Is that her friend's car outside?" I queried. "I'm not sure, Dad," responded Jody. "All right, stay here. I'll drop you off at school shortly," I assured him, scanning the kitchen and living room for Mark before making my way upstairs. As I neared the top of the staircase, I could hear noises emanating from the master bedroom. A man's voice, followed by an exclamation of delight. Upon reaching the landing, I caught sight of Mark. His eyes widened in astonishment, standing by the open door of the master bedroom, his mouth agape in wonderment. I dashed up the stairs and down the hallway to reach my son. Without clear motivation, I retrieved my new cell phone from my shirt pocket and snapped a photo of Mark as I approached him, then another of the scene in the master bedroom. Scooping him up and pressing his face against my shoulder, I glanced into the bedroom to see what had captured his attention. There, on our marital bed, my wife was betraying me with a stranger. What struck me most was the sight of her, still wearing her engagement ring, a symbol of our shattered trust. I ensured that the rings were positioned centrally in the frame as I captured the moment with my cell phone camera. For a moment, I contemplated rushing in and confronting them aggressively. But the thought of the two children witnessing such a scene dissuaded me. It was not the right time. Furthermore, I came to the realization that I had already reconciled my emotions regarding my wife, and this incident only solidified her diminishing significance in my life. Therefore, my primary concern became ensuring the safety of both my children, removing them from the situation to a place where they would be shielded from her. I swiftly took hold of both kids and made my way out the door. Although I didn't notice that Darla was watching me from the bedroom as she turned the corner, I caught a glimpse of her in the rearview mirror as she rushed out of the house onto the street. She was only wearing a robe. I decided to take the children to my sister's house. From my perspective, it seemed like a wise choice, because my sister had a daughter of her own, age 12, who adored my kids and was eager to assist her mother in looking after them. This arrangement minimized the burden on my sister, who didn't consider it a hassle to have my kids around. She genuinely loved them. There was an added benefit to this plan. My wife was unaware that my sister and her husband had recently relocated back to town. They had moved from Denver to Sacramento after he received a promotion from his company. I had attempted to inform Darla about this, but she dismissed the topic before I could elaborate, stating she didn't care about my sister. Ironically, they used to be close friends, and it was my sister who initially introduced us. When I reached my sister's house, I was surprised to find her absent, but her daughter Christy was there. Christy informed me that Catherine had gone to the store, and that she had postponed her return to school for a week to assist her mom in settling into their new home. Christy, being an honor student, was well ahead of her classmates, so missing a week or two wouldn't affect her much. When Catherine returned, I asked Christy to take my kids out to the backyard while I spoke with my sister about watching them for a few days, while I tended to some personal matters. As my cell phone rang, I muttered a curse and switched it off. It was Darla calling from the home phone. Catherine poured each of us a cup of coffee and gestured toward the kitchen table and the chairs arranged around it, saying, "Please have a seat." She took a seat opposite me at the table and demanded, "All right, spill it. Something serious is clearly happening, and I want to know what it is." We conversed for nearly an hour, during which I disclosed everything about the situation between my wife and me, my morning decisions, and the recent discoveries at home. Catherine sat there, visibly stunned for what felt like several minutes. "All right, I'll keep an eye on them for as long as necessary. Does Darla have my number, and is there a chance she'll come looking for them here?" she inquired. "Darla doesn't even know you two are back in town. I tried mentioning it when you said you were returning, but she cut me off, saying she didn't give a shit." Catherine was taken aback by this unexpected revelation. She and Darla had been incredibly close back when Catherine and her husband Bob lived nearby before Bob's promotion and transfer to Denver 3 years ago. Upon their return, Catherine had anticipated picking up right where they left off. However, Darla's sudden change in attitude dashed those hopes. Shaking off her surprise, Catherine insisted, "You're staying here too. Your kids need stability, and the best way for that to happen is for you to be with them as much as possible during this tough time." With determination, Catherine continued, "Go hug your kids, take care of your affairs, and we'll catch up with you later. In the meantime, Christy and I will sort out sleeping arrangements for everyone." She then flashed a grin, pulling me into a hug. After embracing my kids and Christy and expressing my love for them, I left, making a beeline for the bank. I withdrew half of the funds from our savings and checking accounts, opening new ones solely in my name. I reviewed the messages in my cell phone's voicemail and found just one from Darla. It was filled with profanity and threats, warning me about what her friends would do if I didn't return her kids immediately. There was no acknowledgement of her infidelity, no apology for her actions, just anger and accusations. Scanning through the missed calls list, I noticed no other attempts from her. It seemed as though she had made that one call out of obligation, only to forget about it afterward. She had gone through the motions, feeling no need to do more. Sitting in my truck in the parking lot, I dialed the numbers on my credit cards to try and close the accounts. One bank gave me a hard time due to an outstanding balance, which came as a surprise since we always paid off our cards in full each month and discussed purchases beforehand. However, Darla was the one managing the household finances. I managed to remove Darla's name from the account and arranged for the outstanding charges to be faxed to me at Kinko's. Upon reviewing them, I then requested all statements from the past year to be sent to the same location. Upon examining the statements, I was both shocked and saddened by what I discovered. It became evident that Darla had been regularly meeting someone at various motels, averaging at least one encounter per week over the last 6 months. I also observed a concerning pattern. Initially, the motels were of higher quality, such as the Marriott, and the meetings were less frequent, but over time the frequency increased, up to 4 times in the last week, while the quality of the accommodations declined, to places like Motel 6 and what I suspected to be a rundown establishment downtown. It occurred to me that Darla might be in financial trouble, as she was footing the bill for these rooms rather than having the other party pay. Subsequently, I began seeking legal counsel. With my grandmother's recent passing and the prospect of a significant inheritance, I reached out to the estate attorney, who recommended a lawyer by the name of Ralph Edwards. I phoned Ralph's office and explained my situation to the receptionist, who promptly instructed me to come in immediately, assuring me that she would make time for me. Since Ralph's office was just a short distance away, I arrived within minutes. "Wow, that was fast," remarked Sheila, Ralph's receptionist, as she introduced herself. She informed me that Ralph was currently occupied with a client, but assured me it would only be a short wait. Sheila escorted me to a seat and offered me a cup of coffee. I accepted her offer, and as she turned to prepare the coffee, I couldn't help but notice her almost flawless figure in a snug skirt. She poured me a cup and, glancing over her shoulder, asked if I preferred cream or sugar. I was so entranced by her appearance that she had to repeat the question. Sheepishly, I replied, "Just black, thank you," as she smiled and chuckled at my flustered state. Sheila brought me coffee, but instead of handing it to me, she leaned forward and put the cup on the table next to the chair I was sitting on. Without getting up, she looked at me, catching my gaze directed down at her blouse. With a great effort, I tore my gaze away from the sight and met her gaze. Then she smiled, and it was a truly charming smile. Suddenly, Sheila's expression changed. She frowned, straightened up, turned around, and quickly walked over to her desk, where she sat down heavily on it. She blushed when she looked at me across the table and stammered, "I'm so sorry. It was completely unprofessional of me. I do not know what came over me. I understand that you must be going through a difficult time, and I had no right to behave like this. Please accept my sincere apologies." I finally got a real look at her, seeing not only those physical qualities that all men usually pay attention to. What I saw was an amazingly beautiful woman. Sheila is approximately 32 years old, her height is 5 feet 8 inches, and her figure would be the envy of a 20-year-old man. I estimated its size at 38, 25, 36 centimeters. She has an oval face, brown eyes that can charm anyone, an elegant nose and sensual lips framed by a chin that gives her character strength. And the crown of all this is her stunning brown hair. As a result, there was an exceptionally gorgeous woman sitting in front of me with a frustrated expression on her face. With what I hoped was a disarming smile, I turned to her and said, "I must admit I was taken aback by the display you just presented. However, I want to clarify that I'm not shocked. In fact, I find it quite flattering that a woman as lovely as you would find me appealing enough to showcase her charms." I understand that many men in my situation, having just discovered their wife's infidelity, might react with revulsion or seek revenge. Until recently, I would have merely appreciated the sight and then pretended as if nothing had occurred, being deeply devoted to my wife. However, my perspective has shifted, and earlier today, before learning of her affair, I experienced an epiphany. Now I see a remarkably beautiful woman whom I would like to get to know better. I recognize the importance of proceeding cautiously to avoid rushing into a rebound relationship and causing harm to myself, the other person, and my children. Therefore, rather than an apology, what I seek from you is a rain check. I feel compelled to express that I find you exceptionally beautiful, and from our conversation, I also believe you to be intelligent and compassionate. My intention is to navigate through my current situation with my soon-to-be ex-wife, and afterward, I would like the opportunity to get to know you better. Your willingness, as you described it, to connect with me indicates mutual interest, but please feel no pressure to respond immediately. In the brief moment it took Sheila to compose herself, she gazed at me calmly, almost as if she were peering into my soul. Then, with a smile, she replied, "Thank you, and yes, I would like that very much." As we conversed, I found myself feeling quite comfortable in her presence. Shortly after, an intercom beep signaled a request from Ralph for me to join him. Sheila stood and gestured for me to follow her. Unable to resist a quip, I remarked, "I'll gladly follow you wherever you go." She smiled back at me, though I was somewhat surprised, I noticed, as I had been preoccupied with admiring her presence. Sheila escorted me to Ralph's office and returned to her desk, leaving me with a faint sense of loneliness in her absence. Ralph came as a surprise, possessing a deep, resonant voice reminiscent of actor Charlton Heston, yet physically unimpressive. Standing at barely 5 feet 6 inches and appearing to weigh no more than 150 pounds, he seemed far from imposing. With light brown hair thinning at the crown, he gave the impression of being in his early 40s. After rising from his seat to shake my hand, Ralph settled back in his chair and addressed me, saying, "Sheila has provided me with the information you conveyed to her over the phone earlier. However, I'd appreciate it if you could go over it again in case I have any questions or if you'd like to add anything." For the next half hour, I talked about the events of the last few months, paying special attention to the events of the current day. Ralph mostly listened attentively until we got to the point where my son witnessed his mother's relationship with his friend. He asked about the scale of what Mark had seen, what Jody had witnessed, and whether this was the first time the children had been at home, while Darla entertained guests for such a purpose. I admitted that I was not sure, and expressed a desire to find out the answers to these questions. He suggested involving Child Protective Services promptly and deferring the task of uncovering answers to them, rather than attempting it ourselves. This way, he explained, it would become part of an official report to the court rather than merely an accusation from a potentially biased party. Just then, Sheila popped her head into the office and informed, "Mr. Edwards, Connie Maxwell from CPS is online too for you," before flashing me a smile and returning to her desk. Ralph chuckled and remarked, "I swear she's like a witch or something, always doing that. Connie is the person we need to discuss this with, and I bet she'll say she's returning my call." Ralph answered the phone, and for the next few minutes I could only hear his side of the conversation. But what I caught was intriguing. He briefly recounted the events at my house earlier and my actions with the kids. Apparently, Connie inquired about the kids' whereabouts, prompting me to provide him with my sister's address and phone number, which he then passed on to Connie. During the conversation, all I could make out were Ralph's affirmations like, "Yes, okay, I will, he will," as he took notes. Finally, he concluded with, "I will talk to you soon," before hanging up. Ralph then turned to me with what I can only describe as a predatory grin and informed me, "You handled things perfectly. Connie will be visiting your sister's house to assess the situation and speak with them. If there have been previous instances of your wife bringing friends home while the kids were there, she'll uncover it and it will be included in her report to the court." Continuing, Ralph added, "She'll also evaluate whether your sister's home is a suitable place for the kids. While she could recommend foster care based on what you've told me about your sister's family, I doubt that'll be necessary. He informed me that Darla's actions were a form of inappropriate behavior with children. He mentioned that there is a high probability that if the police deem it serious enough, Darla could face arrest, and she could end up in jail for it. I expressed that I wasn't particularly concerned about whether she went to jail. My primary concern was ensuring that my children weren't exposed to such behavior, and I wanted to dissolve the marriage as swiftly as possible. The fastest way to get a divorce for you is to agree to a no fault of the guilty divorce and ignore the aspect of mistreatment. However, if we don't bring today's events into the case, we can't guarantee keeping her away from the children. There's even a chance she could gain custody, and I agree that it's crucial to maintain control over that situation. Whether it's you or Child Protective Services, CPS, in control, her access to the kids must be strictly regulated, Ralph explained. Let's hold off on making a decision until we hear Connie's recommendations. I'll start the paperwork and request a temporary restraining order immediately. We continued our conversation for a few more minutes before I bid farewell. Ralph mentioned that he might reach out to me later today, depending on the actions taken by CPS. He assured me that Connie would keep him informed and added that she would likely contact me before reaching out to him. As I was leaving the office, Sheila approached me and said, "I don't usually do this. In fact, I've never done it before, but I want you to have my home phone number. If you need anything or just want to talk, please feel free to call." With that, she slipped a Post-it note into my hand and then gave me a hug. I felt overwhelming emotions. I couldn't speak because of the strength of my feelings. I had conflicting desires to hug her tightly, express my passion right here and now, to run away, and at the same time stay in her arms indefinitely. While my rational mind reminded me of the inappropriateness of such feelings towards a woman I wasn't married to, another part of me reasoned that since I was about to become a bachelor, it didn't matter. In short, my mind was in turmoil, and I was being pulled in different directions at the same time. Then Sheila took a step back, and a shocked expression appeared on her face as she looked at me. She began to apologize, stammering, "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to be too harsh. I just wanted to assure you that we are here to support you during this difficult time. I didn't want..." Despite being overwhelmed with emotion and rendered momentarily speechless, I mustered the strength to gently place my index finger on her lips, quieting her attempt to apologize. With a smile, I conveyed my gratitude, struggling to articulate my feelings. "Wow, I'm at a loss for words, but thank you. I'll definitely call, if only to hear your captivating voice." Despite the whirlwind pace of events, I acknowledged my ability to handle pressure, particularly in-flight emergencies, and found solace in the thought of reaching out to her. As I reflected on the newfound connection, I couldn't help but hope for something more than friendship. In response, Sheila kissed my finger and playfully urged me to call, asserting it as an order. With a grin, I agreed. "Your wish is my command." We shared a laugh before parting ways, me towards my truck and she towards her desk. I was driving towards my sister's place when I received a call on my phone. It was Connie, informing me that she was on her way to see my kids at my sister's house. She asked me to inform my sister about her visit and also sought my permission to speak with the kids. Although she mentioned she could compel the conversation legally if necessary, it would be a lengthier process requiring a court order. I granted her verbal consent and mentioned I was en route and would meet her there. Upon arriving at my sister's house, I spotted a woman who I presumed to be Connie conversing with my sister on the front porch. They both turned to greet me as I parked and approached them. After exchanging greetings, Catherine mentioned that Connie had briefed her on the upcoming discussion and expressed her intention to speak with the kids privately, unless they felt uncomfortable without us. Connie then addressed me, stating, "Jim, I'll need you to sign a release allowing me to talk to the kids. It's merely a legal formality, but it streamlines the process instead of obtaining a court order." I assured her it wouldn't be an issue. Upon entering the house, both my kids rushed to greet me, excitedly sharing stories about their activities with Christy. I glanced upwards and caught sight of Connie smiling at us, reassuring me that everything would be all right. I proceeded to introduce the children to Connie, assuring them that she only wished to have a conversation with them and that everything would be okay. I emphasized that they could confide in her about anything she asked. Jody, with a solemn expression, asked, "Will she inquire about Mommy and her associates?" She managed to imbue the word friends with a sense of something unsavory. I reassured her that discussing Mommy and her friends would likely be part of the conversation. Jody responded assertively, "Good." I told Mommy that I didn't approve of what she was doing, but she dismissed me, saying it wasn't my concern. Connie spent approximately an hour speaking with the children before making a phone call while they played in the backyard. Then she signaled for Catherine and me to join her outside. "Firstly, Jim, I want to commend you on raising two exceptional children," Connie began. "They clearly adore and respect you, despite being aware of the wrongdoing. They remained silent to protect you. It's evident they love their mother, but they harbor no respect for her. In fact, they're both quite angry with her and were eager to share their grievances with me. Frankly, what I learned wasn't pleasant." Connie clarified, "It looks like your wife invited strange men to Wade's house and had fun with them while the children were left unattended. It seems that she did not make sure that the children attended school regularly, which is why she often missed classes. When I contacted the school, I found out that they planned to transfer the case to us because of the chronic absenteeism of the children, and the explanations provided by Darla seem questionable. The headmistress mentioned that she had a conversation with Darla yesterday, and she was unhappy with the answers she received. As it turned out, the referral had already been sent, prompting Connie to contact a social worker and take responsibility for the case. Connie said, "Something terrible happened to him. One of Darla's partners tried to harm Jody, but Darla did not intervene. According to Jody, it happened yesterday. You chose the perfect moment because the man you saw in bed with Darla is the one who tried to harm Jody." After hearing this, I felt an irresistible urge to leave, go home, and deal with the situation face to face. If I had a firearm, I would readily use it without any hesitation or remorse. Catherine and Connie helped me calm down, and Connie mentioned, "It seems yesterday was the first incident, and Jody seems to be coping well. I believe she could benefit from some counseling, but it shouldn't be extensive. In fact, this incident will significantly strengthen your divorce case. Darla will likely have minimal chance of gaining shared custody and may face either jail time or probation." Connie added, "I contacted the district attorney's office, and they'll be preparing charges to present to a judge. Unless I'm mistaken, the police will likely arrive at your house with a warrant for Darla's arrest late this afternoon." I spent the afternoon at Catherine's discussing the day's events and the circumstances leading up to it. Later, I received a call from Detective Saunders of the local police department. He informed me that a warrant had been issued for my wife by the court and asked if I would accompany him and a few other officers to my home. He suggested it might facilitate matters if I allowed them entry into the house and identified Darla for them. Upon arriving at the house, I noticed the street was packed with unfamiliar cars and trucks. I could hear loud music and what sounded like a raucous party emanating from within. After waiting for about 2 minutes, several police cars pulled up. 2 of them blocked off the street at both ends, and a plainclothes officer approached me, asking if I was Jim. I responded affirmatively to him. "I'm Detective Sergeant Saunders, but please call me Doug," he said. "We've received several noise complaints about this party already. A squad car was here 15 minutes ago asking for the noise to be reduced." I can't help but wonder if this has happened before and, if not, what she did with the kids. And if it has happened before, why didn't the neighbors complain to me? Maybe she thought since you took the kids, she could have a celebration, Doug suggested. A uniformed officer approached and informed Doug that everyone was in position. Doug asked if he, I, and another plainclothes officer could conduct a preliminary search before bringing in the uniformed officers. He felt that the sight of uniforms might alarm many partygoers, so he wanted to choose the right moment. I agreed, and we proceeded to the front door, stepping into the house that, until a few hours ago, I had considered my home. In the foyer, we found two men sitting on chairs in the dining room, and on a small table between them was a large jar. The jar was filled to the brim with money. "Gentlemen," the younger of them said indistinctly, clearly drunk. He was clutching a bottle of my favorite 21-year-old single malt whiskey in his hand. The hostess of the house had a hard day. Her husband caught her in bed with her boyfriend. He took the children and most likely won't be back, so she needs funds. Consequently, the price for a pleasant pastime has increased. If you want full access to the party, you need to deposit $150 into the donation box. He continued by explaining that for those who just wanted to have fun without participating in a group meeting, the donation was only $50. Doug noticed. "This jug seems to be quite full. It's scary to imagine how many there are already." The drunk man replied, "Well, she likes to have gatherings like this, and tonight she intends to set a new record. She has already held 34 meetings, and it's only been about 2 hours. If you don't like it, then a couple of her friends are here right now, and 2 more are on their way." I asked, "Is she interested in group activities? How often does this happen?" "This is the 4th meeting I have attended," he replied, "and I have heard that she has participated in several others, usually in small groups. Her husband's schedule is messy, so the times and places are always changing." "Oh, I see," I admitted. "What was her fee before the recent price increase?" "She didn't have a set fee, just what you would like to contribute." The drunk man seemed surprised when I reached into my pocket, took out a quarter and threw it into the jar. Our friend came in, stood between us and the house, then showed his badge and calmly led us out the front door, where 2 uniformed policemen met us. We stepped into the living room and spotted Katie, the esteemed hostess of the neighborhood, residing just 2 doors down from us. She appeared to be in a compromising situation, prompting thoughts about how her husband, the minister of our Baptist church, would react if he were to see tomorrow's headlines. "Minister's wife arrested." Doug glanced at me with a perplexed expression, silently questioning, "Is that her?" I merely shook my head, and we made our way toward the stairs, leaving Katie and her companions to tend to their affairs. I suspected Doug believed that if the situation escalated, the uniformed police stationed at the door would apprehend them should they attempt to flee. We went a little further and stepped out into the yard, where my wife happened to be in a very unfavorable position. She immediately noticed me. "Hey everyone, say hi to my hubby," she yelled. "You want to get in on the action, honey? I'll even let you cut the line after all, we're married." She looked at the guys in line and said, "You guys don't mind if I let my dear ever-loving hubby cut in front of you, right? Don't worry, it won't take him long." She glanced at me again. "But first I want you to return my kids, my friends Ted and Joe." She pointed to 2 burly guys standing by the barbecue. "We'll knock the crap out of you if you don't." Ted and Joe turned to me, puffing out their chests, trying to look tough and intimidate me. At least I think I was supposed to be scared. For a moment I almost regretted not having my military buddies with me. I wanted to see how much I remembered from my days in the Army Rangers. I was pretty sure I could handle them without much trouble. They didn't teach me to fight fair. Doug and I turned amid the sounds of catcalls from partygoers and made our way toward the entrance door, stepping outside. I turned to Doug and asked, "Do you need me for anything right now?" Doug told me I could wait by the entrance if I wanted, but he wanted me to stay here until everyone was cleared out so I could secure the house. Doug gathered his officers and briefed them, then they continued to block all exits, and Doug and about 10 officers in uniform returned to the house. Chaos ensued. I sat on the hood of a police car and watched as people rushed to the facade windows, peeked outside, and disappeared. I heard shouts and occasional screams coming from inside the house. Several people attempted to dash out through the front door, only to find themselves in the hands of the law. I witnessed Joe pleading with the policeman to let him go because he had a wife and kids at home, and he didn't want them embarrassed by the publicity, as he was a respected figure in the community. As Joe unsuccessfully argued with the policeman, a mobile news van from the local TV station pulled up and started filming, with the first person they captured on camera being, as you may have guessed, Joe. It served him right. If he had just kept quiet and got into the van, his photo wouldn't have appeared on the 10 o'clock news. It didn't take long, and the last few people were escorted out. The last two being my wife Katie, the priest's wife. A bunch of neighbors had gathered to watch, and when Katie was let out, there was a collective gasp. Many of these people attended her husband's church and were quite shocked to see her being led into the paddy wagon wearing only a blanket. Steve Bauer, my neighbor from across the street, a gossip worse than any 10 women, saw me sitting on the hood of a police car and approached. "What's going on?" "It's a raid," I told him, barely holding back laughter. "Are they arresting those people?" "Yes, I do believe they're being arrested." "What will they be charged with?" "I think you should ask the police this question, but I'm pretty sure that the girls will be charged for actions that are extremely unwelcome in our society," I told him. Steve hurried to break the news to the other neighbors. As Darla was being let out, she noticed me and somehow managed to break away from the officer who was leading her to the van. She ran up to me, which was a mistake, because the blanket had slipped off her and her hands were handcuffed behind her back. She stood in front of me with her head bowed and cried, "Jim, please, it was just a big mistake. It shouldn't have gotten out of control like this. Please tell the police that everything is fine and let me go." "Darla, the situation may have really gotten out of control, but considering the fact that I only left this morning, you certainly managed to put everything together in a big hurry. So I can only conclude that this is not the first time. Everything was too well organized for that. I may be new here, but this wasn't the first time for you. Not to mention that I can't ask the police to forget about it. They won't do it even if I try, and I won't. Oh, and don't bother asking. I won't bail you out." Before she could say anything else, the officer accompanying her rushed to her with a blanket, wrapped her in it, and dragged her to the van. Doug approached and informed me that the house had been cleared, allowing me to secure it. He suggested that I might want to hire someone to clean it before considering moving back in. I agreed. We locked up and decided to leave it until the next day. In the morning, I planned to call a locksmith to change the locks and arrange for cleaning services. Doug assured me that the patrol officers would keep watch over the property overnight in case any intruders appeared. After locking up, I headed to my sister's place. Glancing at the clock in my truck, I was surprised to see it was only 7:15. So much had transpired that day. It felt astonishingly early. Upon arriving at my sister's, I discovered a picnic unfolding in the backyard. To my surprise, Shayla sat on the glider chatting with my sister, while Jody rested comfortably in her lap, looking utterly content. Sheila noticed me approaching and seemed somewhat surprised yet pleased. However, she remained silent until Catherine introduced us. "Jim, meet Sheila, my next-door neighbor. Sheila, this is Jim, my big brother." As I reached out to shake her hand and bowed, we both burst into laughter, leaving Catherine looking shocked, confused, yet ultimately pleased. Turning to Catherine, Sheila remarked, "Jim is actually my boss's attorney. We crossed paths today at my office, where I practically threw myself at him and dragged him into an empty room. Remembering your maiden name, I wasn't entirely taken aback when he walked through the gate. Your description of the kids had me fairly certain it was the same person. Is this the brother you tried to introduce me to back in college? The one I refused to meet because I was fixated on the loser cheater I ended up marrying?" Catherine chuckled. "Yes, he's my only brother. Remember when you turned him down? I introduced him to Darla, and you know how that turned out." Sheila's expression turned serious as she addressed me, saying, "Jim, I understand you're going through a tough time right now. You might feel like being married to Darla was the worst thing, but you have 2 amazing kids who adore you. They'll be looking to you for guidance, so don't forget that, okay?" "I won't forget. Knowing they rely on me has helped me hold it together today. I know they need their father, especially since their mother might not be around much. I love my kids and will do everything to raise them well." Sheila smiled at me. "I know you will, and I'll be here to help, however I can." She shifted on the swing, causing Jody, who was almost asleep, to stir. Sheila quieted her with a gentle tickle and a kiss on the head. Jody settled down, and Sheila motioned for me to sit beside her. I sat down and draped my arm over her shoulder. Instantly, she nestled into my chest, reaching up to grasp my wrist and guiding my arm around here, releasing a contented sigh. Catherine observed to us. Looks like you two have more than just met today. I know it's crazy, but we really did just meet, Sheila said. It feels like we've known each other forever. I know it's too soon for Jim to be seeking another relationship, but I can't help it when I'm with him like this. I just want to be close to him, to touch him. I hope he feels the same way. With that, she tilted her head back, gazing into my eyes with a hopeful expression. I leaned in and gave her a gentle kiss on the lips, initially intended to be light, but quickly escalating into something more. Sheila withdrew and glanced up at me. Wow, perhaps we shouldn't engage in such behavior when others are around. We might end up embarrassing them. Seriously, Jim, I understand that you're just beginning a journey with uncertain destinations. It wouldn't be wise for you to rush into a relationship, especially considering you're still legally married. But I want to make it clear that when you're ready, I'll be here, hoping you choose me. Just then, Mark climbed onto my lap, somehow finding space alongside Sheila, and snuggled up to both of us, settling down to sleep with a sigh. I think you're both a hit, I remarked. And you two are hits with me too. Before today I didn't believe in love at first sight, but now I do. Do you remember what Patrick Swayze said to Demi Moore in Ghost? I asked. No, what did he say? Ditto. Her smile illuminated her face, a sight I knew I'd do anything to witness again. Reflecting on the old John Denver song, Some Days Are Diamonds and Some Days Are Stones, I realized today encompassed both. The stone represented the end of my marriage to Darla. Even now I remain uncertain about why she chose the path she did. The diamond symbolizes my new relationship with Sheila. While I'm unsure of where it will lead, I have a strong sense that we'll cherish the journey. Afterward, I realized that selecting Ralph Edwards as my lawyer was the perfect decision. He had the right connections to expedite matters efficiently. If it weren't for Ralph and Connie, Darla might have remained free for up to a week before her arrest. However, she ended up spending more than just one night in jail. I'm unsure of Ralph's involvement, but Darla struggled to secure bail. No bail bondsmen were willing to assist her, and I had no inclination to aid her. Consequently, she remained incarcerated until her trial, which was a lengthy process. Darla was convicted of felony child endangerment and received probation, which she violated. We never heard from her again, and I never discovered the reason for her disappearance.
That's the end of the story. Write your opinion in the comments about this story. It will be interesting for us to read it. Also, do not forget to like and subscribe to our channel so as not to miss new, equally interesting and exciting stories. Good luck!